everybody. Welcome back to Conversations from the Hearth. We are back and very excited to have a special guest with us today. This is Miss Kristi Stotts. She is going to be coming onto the team in a more official capacity very soon as our incoming manager.
Yes, sir.
We want to just talk with her today to get to know her a little bit more, maybe have some of our students get to know her a little bit more, and also to just pick her brain a little bit about what it's been like teaching in public schools, how she's felt coming onto staff here at the Dojang, and some of the similarities and differences between those two things. So, yes, sir, without further
Yes, sir.
ado, Master Olds.
Yeah, so Christy, can you tell us a little bit about your background and
Mhm.
what you've been doing up until this point?
Yes, sir. So I graduated many years ago from Texas State University, and I went into teaching right away. I taught high school history,
Hmm.
and then took a break from teaching for a while to raise my kids, and then went back many years later and taught middle school English. That's what I've been doing for the past 5 years. I went back in 2020 in the COVID year, which was kind of a crazy time to come back, but teachers were very needed at that time, and I was credentialed and wanted to be a part of the solution and helping in a time when it was really needed. And this will be my last year in the classroom because it has been getting progressively more challenging since returning in 2020. So I'm really happy to be making the transition to working full time in the martial arts. Yes, sir. It's something that's really near and dear to my family, and we're here all the time anyway, so may as well just become a professional
Yes,
martial
ma'am.
artist.
Yes, ma'am. Well,
Yes,
we're really excited to have you. I think you bring to the team a wealth of knowledge and experience that's going to
ma'am.
help us get to even higher level than we're at right now. Um, and so we're just really excited about that. I have heard over the years many things about issues that are going on with the public school, and I have been very curious for a long time. And so I kind of like, I know this is maybe a sensitive topic and all this kind of stuff, but those make the best YouTube videos. Those make the best conversations. So I'm kind of curious, like, what are some of the things that were particularly challenging about teaching in the public school?
One of the main things, at least in the district where I am still teaching until the end of this year, is just overcrowding in the classrooms. There are just
Yes, ma'am.
so many students in each class, and the support staff is just not there. Even in classes where I'm lucky enough to have myself and another credentialed teacher in the room, it's two of us versus 30 of them. And
Mm,
when over half of those kids have specific education plans, specific IEPs, or learning disabilities, or needs that we need to meet at a really high level, we're not able to really service them in the way that they deserve when we have so many kids that we're
Yes,
trying to
ma'am.
juggle at that time. So it's overcrowding to me has been the biggest obstacle.
Well, it seems like it's twofold because there's less teacher to student ratio. At the same time, every student is requiring more personalized attention. It reminds me of my master brought a group of Americans over to Korea when I was 15. Fortunately, I missed that trip, but he came back with almost tears in his eyes because he said, I said, sir, how did it go? How did everyone like? He's like, oh, between you and me, it's the hardest experience of my life. I went over there. And every single time I took people out to eat, they would say, I don't want to eat that. I don't want to eat that. I don't want to eat that. And even when we go to McDonald's, which is their one little place that they would eat at, they would say, well, I don't want lettuce, or I don't want tomato, or I want this, or I want that. And that's not how it works in Korea. Like, it's just one hamburger and everyone gets the same thing, like.
Mm.
And so he's sitting there pulling his hair out, having to order for like 20, 30 people, individually changing every menu item. And they're all angry because they're like, we never get to eat our food in the way that we want to eat it and all this kind of stuff. And, what can he do? You've put him in an incredibly hard position, and it's incredibly challenging to ask these things. And I kind of feel the same way about the way we're running our education in the public school is like, you're just asking way too much of these teachers. I don't want to put words or thoughts in your mouth. This is my personal opinion, but I see my son is in elementary school right now, and his teacher sends home a personal newsletter every week. Every week. Are you kidding me? I can barely write a newsletter once a month, let alone every week. And they already have a newsletter for the school. Why do they need a personalized newsletter for that classroom? That's kind of crazy to me. I was talking to some of the other parents, and there was one guy teacher at the whole school, and he was the only one who just refused to take pictures of the kids and send them to the parents. It's like, I don't have time for it. I'm too busy teaching them. I don't have time to play PR and send these pictures of the kids. And all the moms, they were so angry. Like, I hate this teacher, blah, blah. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, I wouldn't be sending pictures. Like, I don't have time for that. Like, do you want me to teach your kids? Or do you want me to make it seem like I'm teaching your kids? The best teacher in that school, and she was a great teacher. I don't want to put any shade on her, but she had such a great review from all the parents. And my son went through her class. And you know what she did? She was so clever. She would give out all these awards. She would get these awards from the principal, oh, your son is doing so well. And they would send them to us all the time. And we would feel like our kid was just the best kid in the whole world. And it worked. But then every day I would come home and I would say, son, tell me what you learned. You have to do 10 push-ups. And he couldn't tell me anything. He could never tell me anything he learned, even to this day. I'm still working on it. And so, I get the sense that, he's not learning that much, but there's this clever PR game that's being played out of necessity. Because if they don't play that game, the parents are going to think that the kids aren't doing well. I also have heard a lot, and you probably know more about this. I'd be curious to learn about this. But I've had some parents tell me that at their schools, their kids get it's like, oh, my kid's always getting a 2. And I'm like, I don't even know what a 2 is. But apparently at some schools, they will actually rank their kids' day, like how well they did that day. And if the kid gets a high score, he comes home, he feels good about it. But if he gets a low score, he feels terrible about it. And one of the things that we're always doing on the mats is, we have kids that are coming in with all different at all different levels. Some of them are primed and ready to go. They come from really great families that instill respect and discipline in them from a very early age. Others come in from, kind of broken homes and, challenging situations, and they don't understand that. They have no boundaries have ever been set for them. They're very combative. They're sort of manipulative in the way they interact, and we have to reorganize all of those behaviors, and it's a bit of a challenge. But we never label them. We never say, this is who you are and this is where you're going to stay. And I feel like that is something that even when I was going up through school was starting to become a thing, and put people in their camps. This person has a learning disability and needs to be in this group and that group. And I'm not completely disparaging that. I mean, we want to give people the opportunity to excel, and I think it's all well-meaning, but some of it can be a little overdone to the point that you get stuck. And one of the things that we do on the mats all the time, you have a kid who is typically misbehaved and typically not leading, and I'll say, everyone stand at attention. Person who stands at attention the best can be a line leader today. And this kid who's like a green band, he's not even a high-ranked student in the Warriors program, one day accidentally stands up straight with his hands at his side. He's not even thinking. Maybe he's zoned out. And I say, so-and-so, come on over. And they're like, what? Me? I'm a leader? And yeah, you're a leader. You just showed leadership. And it's from a little example like that a leader can be made. And I think unless you have that nuance, and a big administrative apparatus tends to not be very nuanced in their approach. They tend to be like ham-fisted about everything, like you have to do this and you have to do that. And teaching is a real art. It requires patience and humor, and sometimes you got to tell the hard truth. Sometimes you got to tell a white lie. You've got to sometimes, you know, this sounds horrible, but kind of embarrass the kid a little bit, like show him what he's really doing. Like,
Mm.
this is what you look like right now. Like, this is how you should look. This is how a good push-up is done. Don't, sometimes we say like, you know, this is what we call baby punches, guys. It is kind of embarrassing. I'm like, this is how babies punch. Show me how a real martial artist needs to punch,
Yes, sir.
and it's not like we're calling them out and horribly embarrassing them,
Yes,
but
sir.
like little
Yes, sir.
things like that. And that's the kind of thing that like a kind of autistic mindset to teaching is just like, it's just yes, it's like black or white. It's like it's only this way or it's only that way. You have to be able to see the subtle nuances and know how to work.
Mm.
Yes, sir.
So anyway, tell me more about that. Have you any of those
Well,
experiences?
yeah, so two things that you mentioned really stood out was one about the McDonald's order. It's 100% like that. Like you can't, when you're trying to service everyone in all of these tiny ways, you're doing a disservice to the group as a whole.
Yeah.
Because you're spread so thin trying to get everyone's McDonald's order right that then you're making mistakes. You're missing things that are going on with this kid that you should be noticing, etc. So yes, the workload and the just expectations of you being able to micromanage so many different needs and personalities, it's just overwhelming. The other thing is, I definitely think that there are kids who get, well, two things. There's this epidemic of learned helplessness that has been getting worse and worse. And I blame
Say that again. That's
learned helplessness.
Okay.
I definitely blame some of this on the fiasco that was COVID and hybrid learning. 100% it's that. I also think that it has to do with social media and screen time, but I also think it's this, to your point about putting people in groups with labels, it's this giving every kid a label of, well, just because this kid struggles a little bit with something, they have a learning disability or they have this special need, when perhaps what they really need is some nurturing, some guidance, a mentor in their life. And instead, they're being told, well, you can't do this. So we're going to give you all these special supports. And then they think, oh, well, I can't do this. I don't really have to do this. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And I see it more and more. I teach or have taught middle school these past 5 years. So I'm not dealing with having to give people twos at the end of the day, but I am having to deal with more standardized testing pressure and so on. And so a lot of what we are doing is tied to how are they performing on these certain benchmark exams throughout the year. And they get it in their head, well, I don't have to worry about this because they're never going to fail me anyway. I'm never going to be held back anyway. I don't have to worry about really being held accountable because I can't do anything. I've been told I have this label. I can't do it. I'm never going to do well on this test, so I will not put effort forward. And then that trickles down into every single thing that they do in school. And it just creates this attitude of, well, will you just do this for me? I need your help. And so yes, learned helplessness.
Well, that makes me think, we've talked so much on the mats these past few years about the crisis of initiative. And I think these two things go hand in hand.
Yes.
There's the learned helplessness, which is I can't. And then there's the crisis of initiative, which almost manifests as not even I won't, but I just have no idea what I'm supposed to do anyway. And even if I do, I don't have the confidence to take the step. We'll say things like, all right, everybody make a circle, right? And the kids will just stand there. And they're looking around, and I'm like, this is not a circle. And they're like, we know it's not a circle, but we don't know what to do to make it. Like, just step back. Step back. Make it circle shaped.
Well, we were just musing back because we were both at a martial arts meeting with a bunch of experienced martial artists, and we said, make a circle. And it was the most beautiful circle I've ever seen, and it reminded me of the 90s and stuff where, my master would say, line up, and we'd be like, you're all lined to our spots, and if anyone's out of place, they'd be like running around frantically trying to squeeze in somewhere. And it was a beautiful circle, and all the people there were, in their 40s and stuff, and they were, from a generation that, I think had a lot of initiative. And, now we say make a circle, and we work really hard to teach how to make a circle and how to line up. I've never worked so hard as I
Mm.
now to do that stuff, and it was so much better back in the day.
Mm.
And it's like a crisis of initiative. Everyone just kind of stands there
Mm.
and like waits for somebody to move them.
Mhm.
And it's like, and we always say, don't wait till someone comes by and puts you where you need to be. You find out where you need to be and get to where you need to go.
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, it's a crisis of
Yes,
initiative,
sir. Yes,
absolutely.
sir.
Yes, sir.
I also think, going back to what Kristi was saying, where it's what was it? What was it again? What was the word?
Learned
Learned
helplessness.
helplessness.
Learned helplessness.
Yes, sir.
I have a lot of parents come in that they're like, I'm not expecting much, but just do what you can.
Mm.
Like they're dyslexic and they have
Mhm.
ADHD and
Mhm.
all this kind of stuff. Um, and I say, no, they're going to be amazing. You got
Yes,
to
sir.
believe in them.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of those students, because we believed in them, went on to do great things.
Yes, sir.
And I think sometimes we can almost discount people's capacity because we put them in a box and we say, this is your limitation. This is
I
what you're
can't.
going to be
I
able to achieve
can't.
in your
Yes.
life. And it's like, well, if there may be some limitations, like everyone's got, limitations. We got 2 arms and 2 legs, and, there are some kind of superhumans who got a bigger lung, and maybe they can bike further than other people, or they're LeBron James and they're just this physical gift, to the sport. But whatever that limitation is, it's not going to be increased by putting you in a box. Like as soon as you do that, you are only going to be able to go as far as this box can uh, dictates.
Yes, sir.
When I was in Korea, one of the most eye-opening experiences to me was, so Koreans didn't believe in stress until recently, and they didn't have a word for it. And now their word for it is stress, like stress, like that, like the word stress, because there was no concept of stress. And now everyone in Korea is stressed out all the time.
Gosh.
And they're all going to therapy and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling stressed. And it's this huge topic on all the shows and everything. And probably they had stress, but they weren't really focused on it. So it was easier for them to deal with it. Then they said, oh, wait, I do have this weird anxiety that's coming up from all the work that I'm doing. And then they start looking at it, and then it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it consumes their entire reality. Like, I'm stressed all the time. And I think that's what we've done with our society in a way, is we've just hyper focused on all the negative things, and now we're just getting overwhelmed by it all. And so don't put people in boxes, because then you're going to get them super overwhelmed. You're going to say, well, the reason why you can't take this exam is because you're too distracted because you have ADHD. Instead of saying, yeah, maybe you have ADHD, but just try your best. Like, do your best. I'm gonna hold you to your personal best standard and not let you get out of it.
And I think importantly there as well is reminding the student that it's their responsibility to also hold themselves to that standard. That's something I feel like we're constantly talking about on the mats as well, and that you alluded to earlier is, the instructor is there to lead you, to guide you, but ultimately, at the end of the day, we're looking at you to see that you're pulling out that leadership, right? I can't make you be a leader. I can recognize the leadership qualities that you're showing. You were talking about maybe the green band who accidentally is standing at ready, and you say, "Yes, this is it." And then suddenly, ding, there's a green light. There's, a gold star in their brain that's like, wait, what led to that moment? What led to me feeling like a leader? Oh, I was being a leader. I was being a leader. And whether it's taking a test, whether it's raising your hand to answer a question, or just try to give an answer, even if you don't know for sure, right? Those skills that we're building, the confidence that we're building, and the self-regard and self-respect is so, so important. I feel there are certain students who I feel really drawn to And these are the students who have a really hard time communicating or opening up. Maybe they're very shy, they tend to look down, they're very tight, 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 and they don't want to look at you and they don't want to talk to you. Just a quick story here. I had a student I was working with a few years ago. I was actually at an elementary school, working in their CIS program, which is Communities in Schools of Central Texas. And I worked with one student who was basically nonverbal for months and months. And I met with this student for an hour every week. And for the first probably 6 months, he never said a word to me. I would talk to him. He was never angry or mean or disrespectful, but I would talk, he would listen, and just would not respond. And we would have our meetings, and he would go back. And it took months and months and months for him to start opening up. But when he did, when I started to develop the rapport to a point where he felt his own confidence, where he felt like maybe I can make a sound, maybe I can nod my head, maybe I can do something. Once we got that ball rolling, I mean, it was a totally different person that I started meeting with. And I ended up, by the end of that time working with him, we did talk to each other and he talked back to me very quietly, little sentences, but we got there. And I was like, we talked about, remember when you used to never say anything to me? And he would just kind of like chuckle, like kind of embarrassed. Like he's like, yeah, I do remember that. And that all comes from, uh, maybe not all, but I recognized very early on, I'm not going to put a huge emphasis on the fact that this student's not talking to me. I'm not going to say he can't talk, or if a different teacher comes in, I say, oh, he doesn't talk. He doesn't talk because then he will say, I don't talk. He's right. I don't talk. Why are you trying to talk to me? No, I just talk to him like I talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And I would push and prod and poke and try to be silly with him so he would open up. And in his own time, he started to come around. I was like, okay. And when he did start speaking to me, it was cause for celebration. I was like, hey, what did you just say? And he was like, what? You got me, you got me. And that happens so much on the mats where whether it's behavioral or whatever, we'll look at the students and we'll say, hey, what did you just do? And they're like, got me. You caught me being a leader. You caught me doing the thing I was supposed to do. And we're like, yep. And now we've seen it and now you have no excuse.
Yes. One really interesting phenomenon that I think all three of us have experienced in teaching, I would assume, is you'll get a student who is usually really great and really focused. And then for whatever reason, they stumble and they start to feel like they can't do well and they start to shut down. And maybe like the rest of that day, they start acting in a way that's not typical of how they normally act. And that is the inverse of what we were talking about before, which is like you have a student who typically is misbehaving and then he incidentally does something right. He gets highlighted for it. And then that day, for the rest of the day, he's like amazing. And you're like, wow, where did this person come? And then the next day, maybe they're back to a little bit closer to where they were before. And then you have to do it again and do it again until you slowly inch them towards the right behavior. This is showing exactly what is happening when you put a kid in a box because you're basically causing him to shut down. You're saying, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're not successful. And so you're going to just be like, well, if I'm not good at anything and I'm not successful, then I'm going to way down here and I'm just giving up and I'm just going to flop around and I'm going to goof off and I'm just going to be, I'm going to try to get attention some other way. If I can't get attention by being good, I'm going to get attention by being bad. And what we have to do, and this is true for all of life, not just in the classroom, make successes, small incremental successes, raise the challenge up a little bit at a time. So I'm not opposed to making it easier for some students because what I want them to do is I want them to be successful. So if you have to take them into a learning center and give them a little extra time, okay. But there should be an expectation that we're going to try to get better and better and better. And we're not going to stay where we are and we're not going to let you lose accountability. Like you have to
Mm.
be ratcheting it up. And I think what ends up happening is there's no accountability, and the kid just gets, it feels like he has no responsibility.
Yes,
And
sir.
that's what we're talking about
Yes,
with the
sir.
crisis of initiative.
Mhm.
And that's another word for initiative is kind of responsibility.
Right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If I can hop in there
Yeah.
as well, yeah, the accountability. I mean, crisis, I don't know if this is the word, but it feels like it, it certainly feels like the word. It reminds me of actually one of my family members, coming up through middle school and through high school, very bright person, but then got to a certain point where they were being told, you failed this class. We're going to give you another chance. 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 So to the point where it's almost like the teaching staff was like
Well, can we?
begging the student.
Okay,
Mhm.
finish, but I got to
Say.
remember that because I want to jump in there.
It's almost like the teaching staff was begging the student, like, please, please, please just do something so we can pass you to the next grade, right? And yes, sir, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Well, that's like, there's no accountability at all. Where it's like, what I would assume would happen and this is not so far off from me. I'm talking about my little sister who's like 6 years younger than me, right? And it was a little bit different from where I was at in school, even that age gap, where it was like, oh yeah, if you fail, like congrats, like you're doing 11th grade over again. Like it's like there's not like please, 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 like just turn in one assignment. We'll just change your grade to 100. You can just, pass on through. And I feel like that's become increasingly common just these past, even 5, 6, 7 years. Accountability.
When has pleading with anyone ever worked? Like that's just ridiculous that you think that that's going to work. I hear all the parents say all the time, like, could you please go to the car? Could you please, could you please, could you please? I mean, you could say it once. It's a nice way to say it. And if your kid is well behaved, why not? Like, hey, son, could you please go to the car? Okay. But if you look like you're pleading and you say it multiple times, if let's say you said it 5 times already, do you think a sixth time is going to make him do it? Seventh time, an eighth time? No. What that student is going to do is they're going to say, oh, I'm in control now. This person needs me to say yes and to do what they want me to do. And who is going to be swayed by pleading? Someone who's emotionally stable, thoughtful, um, like who cares about you and your feelings and emotions. Is that the person you're dealing with right now? The little spazzy kid who's like, I'm not doing whatever you want me to do? No, that's not that person. That person is just a ball of chaos that is like just roiling and trying to figure out where his boundaries are. And like, can I get away with this? Can I get away with that? Ooh, I did that and that felt really good, even though everyone thought it was really mean. Like, they're just figuring it all out, and they need your help to help them frame the world and become a good person. Like, I mean, if you think this is going to be a very divisive topic, and I don't mean anything by that, but like some people think that kids, if you just leave them on your own, there's this whole new agey parenting that's going on, where you just leave them to their own devices, they will turn out to be great kids. Yeah, maybe once in a while, like one in a million or something. I love my kids. I can leave them in the house. I don't do this, but I think I could just leave them in the house and go away. And no, they wouldn't burn anything down. They wouldn't turn on the stove. They wouldn't get out the spray paint and spray up the walls. They wouldn't do anything. Maybe my littlest one, who's 3, she's but my older son and my daughter, I don't think they would do that. But you know what? They push boundaries all the time, every day, but I'm always there. Nope, not going that way. Why aren't we going that way? I don't just stop them. I explain why. Because if you go that way, you're going to cut your hand off. like something bad is going to happen. And you're like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Okay. So, the worst thing people can do for kids, I think, is to treat them like kids. If they're too too childish in their mindset, sometimes you have to start where they're at. So teaching them, treating them a little bit like a kid is sort of necessary for your own personal safety in that engagement.
Mhm.
But if you can get away with it, treating them in a more mature way will show them by example how
Mm,
they need to act. And I really think that that's part of the problem we're having with our academic system, our society in general, is we're treating everyone like they're children. Like people need to be treated like adults, and then they'll act like an adult. I know that personally because when I lived in Korea, they have a tremendous amount of responsibility when you become a fully fledged adult. You're supposed to buy your own house outright with no um, mortgage. Like you're just supposed to have the money in hand and buy it. And houses are very expensive because everyone lives really close together. So there'll just be endless rice paddies and then like a skyscraper and then endless rice paddies. Like everyone just wants to be together. So then it's very expensive because there's only one place to buy a house and they have to have all the money together because they don't take out loans. And then when they buy their house, they're supposed to have their parents come live with them. And then they have to take care of their parents for the rest of their life until they die. So it's a ton of responsibility. But because of so much responsibility, kids don't grow up until they're in their mid 30s. You'll have people living with their parents
mm,
like they're 35 years old, you know? And because of that, everyone will treat you like you're a kid. Like I went over there when I was 25, and in American standards, I was an adult. I lived on my own. People treated me as an adult. I go over there, and everyone's treating me like I'm still like 15 years old. And I would go hang out with other people my age. I have many good friends. I don't mean any disparagement about them or anything. But a lot of the people that I hang out with, they'd be acting like they were in in like middle school and stuff sometimes. They would be doing fart jokes and kind of sexual innuendo and things like that. And I'd be like, wow, what is going on here? And I'm not saying everyone's like that. I don't want to paint a broad brush and upset anyone, but there definitely seemed to be a different level of maturity and a different level of responsibility that was expected at that age, the same age as me in the Korean society.
mm.
But I also realized the reason that that was is because it's like delayed adolescence. Like they are going to take over an immense amount of responsibility later, way more than we take on over here. So it's balanced out, and I'm not trying to disparage anyone, but it was a really good example of how it's maturity is in the eye of the beholder. Like there was time back in history when like a 14-year-old boy was a grown man and he was expected to go out into the farm and and plow the field and drive the car, and he had no childhood whatsoever. And you know what? If you went and you met that kid who was 14 back like 100 years ago, he's probably as mature as like a lot of the 20-year-olds, in our society now. And that's exactly what I'm saying. Like the way you treat kids is the way they will treat you and act, I think.
So I wanted to maybe come back closer to the beginning of the conversation, and just kind of tie some things together here. So, Kristi, we were talking about, what it's been like being a classroom teacher for the past 5 years. And, we have clearly just talked about what it's like teaching on the mats here. You've been assisting on the floor, you've been learning the ropes, you've been learning how we do things around here. And I'm curious to know, we alluded at the beginning that you'll be coming into the managerial role fairly soon, these next few months, where we're going to be working a lot on that. But you're going to be teaching on the mats more. You're going to be here, more full time very soon. And I'm just curious, you know, plenty of similarities, plenty of differences as well. What are some of the things that you've noticed about how we do things here, or some of the things that you're looking forward to um, that are making you feel confident about this transition and maybe excited to step into this more full time?
Yes, sir. So one thing that I kept thinking when Grandmaster Rolls was speaking about how we're raising kids today is this idea of mental fortitude. I just feel like kids are really fundamentally missing mental fortitude. And I know for myself, it's something I try to instill in my kids every day. I have three teenagers, and so they're all at this very pivotal moment in their lives. And while none of them are perfect, I think that they are all respectful and kind
Mm-hmm.
and self-sufficient. And I can leave them at home by themselves because they are old enough to be home alone, but and they don't do anything crazy. They don't do
Mm-hmm.
anything. Like people are always shocked that they never get into trouble or push boundaries. It's like, well, they're, for lack of a better word, well trained.
Hmm.
But also they have the mental fortitude to understand that making bad decisions is not going to serve them well in the long
Right.
term. And
That's
also,
prudence.
they enjoy being at home. They enjoy each other. They enjoy doing things with me and my husband. Like we're a very tight knit family, and we do things together all the time. My kids are never trying to escape the family nest
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
they love being home. And I'm sure you have the same experience with your kids, Grandmaster.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you build a strong family where the connections are strong and the desire to protect each other and do well by each other
Yeah.
as a family is strong, I think that will serve everyone in the family well and just solve so many problems
Hmm.
for everyone. I feel like there's this, to go sort of back to what Grandmaster Olds was talking about, and then I promise I'll circle back to your
Yeah,
question
sure.
more directly. But um, there is this like strange dichotomy right now between we're trying to baby these kids at school and teach them that they can't do anything without all these extra supports, and they don't have the accountability factor there. But then also, we're letting kids have cell phones at age 11 with no
Mm-hmm.
restrictions, and they stay up all night playing Fortnite and watching TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids all have phones, but they didn't get phones until they were 12. That was a hard and fast rule. And we monitor everything they do. And even my 16-year-old is only allowed to be on his phone until 9:30, and then it turns off. And
Mm-hmm.
he only has 3 hours of TikTok per day, and then he cannot be on that app anymore. And do I hear all the time, like, it's crazy that you set those boundaries? Yes. But is he way better than your kid? Yes. So it's,
Hmm.
I think that it's so wild to me, and it does make teaching in the public schools harder because parents want it both ways. They want, and this is good, talk about divisive topics. This is a divisive topic, but they want teachers to be perfect at all times and follow these very specific
Mm-hmm.
education plans down to the letter at
Mm-hmm.
all times so that their child has every support and has to put in the least amount of effort possible in order to succeed without
Mm-hmm.
the accountability component there or and
Hmm.
without that, all right, let's just try to grow, let's have this accountability of growth instead
Mm-hmm.
of this accountability of how can we meet the bare minimum. But then they also want to let them live on talkies and be on TikTok until 4 a.m. And
Mm-hmm.
I do not understand that style of parenting at all, and I think that it is a huge problem that is creating problems in our public schools. I
Hmm.
mean, without a doubt.
So this is gonna also piss some people off, but I don't mean it like parenting. Okay, let me preface this. Parenting is hard.
Mhm.
Most people don't have any interaction with children until 20, maybe even 30 years goes by, and then suddenly they have kids. And they're like, whoa, kids are like a foreign species to me. I don't even know what a kid is. But now I have one, and I'm gonna figure out how to raise this person.
Mhm.
Well, that's why so many people bring their kids here because, and
Hmm.
this is gonna sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but like I started working with kids when I was 12 and was and just kept doing that my entire life. And I've always been around kids. And I'll tell you one thing that is really important with kids is they need boundaries.
Mhm.
And what Kristi was talking about by setting these boundaries, like you can only have a cell phone when you're 12 and you can only have TikTok for so many hours. And she might say, some parents would say she's crazy. Like that's too much. These boundaries are too strict. But here's the thing that people don't talk about enough. That's hard to do.
Mhm.
That's really hard to do to set
Hmm.
a boundary and
Hmm.
maintain it. And the reason why so many parents don't do that
Mhm.
is because they're checked out.
That's true.
They're not really giving their kids the time and attention that they need because they're too focused on their own lives. And it's hard. I remember I had done this working with kids my whole life, and I thought when I have kids, I wanted to be a dad when I was 18. And of course, I was too young. I realized that, like, financially would not work out well, but I wanted to be. I was like, oh, I just can't wait till I'm a dad. Um, but the thing was, I'm losing my train of thought here. Um,
Talking boundaries and
Being too involved in their own life to
yes.
set
oh, I
boundaries.
was saying, okay, so I always wanted to be a parent. And I thought, okay, I got this. I got this, no problem. Like when I have kids, I will rock it. And then I had a kid. I was like, this is so much work. Oh my God, this is way harder than I expected, you know? Like always crying, you know, you're the first like, couple days in the hospital, it's like, oh my God, I can never sleep. And then you get them home and it's just like they're either throwing up on you or they're whining or they pee themselves and you gotta change the diapers. I mean, it's a ton of work. And then when you only have one kid, they need your constant attention because there's no one else in their world. And a lot of parents will bar anyone else from being involved with them. Like, this is my kid, and like they can get their like enlightenment about the world from me, which means that they only have you to learn from. And so they will always need you. They'll need you so much. And so the reason why I'm saying all this is because being a parent is a more than a full-time job. It is a life job, and it requires your entire life and everything you have to throw at it. And so when I say that parents are being neglectful of their duties, I'm not saying that because it's like, this is easy. You should do this. Like, of course, like, but you can't get up and pour yourself a bowl of cereal. Like, that's easy. I'm saying, what, you can't get up, go down in the coal mine and give yourself black lung and then come back out of there? Because this is hard. But because it's so hard, people are like, you know what? I know how to do this. I know how to focus on what I do and do my job and all this kind of stuff. So I'm gonna send my kid to daycare and I'm gonna, focus on the teacher teaching my kid like how to be an adult. That was never the purview of the teacher. It was never the job of the teacher to raise your kid. Your teacher was there to give them an education. And I think we've relied too much on the teachers to do everything for the parents because the parents aren't really doing any of the work themselves. I can't blame them. It's a hard gig. It's really, really hard. Um, and actually, the more kids you have, maybe people would disagree with me on this, but I feel like some ways it's harder, but in some ways it's easier because they can learn from each other and they can entertain each other. And in a world where people are progressively only having one, maybe two kids, they're like making it hard for themselves. Like they only have one kid. Like once if you'd hear about these families of 12 or 6 or whatever, these huge families. You think that the mom and dad are raising that 12th kid? No. Like that 12th kid is being raised by like an entire clan of all these other kids who are like, oh, come with me, oh, come with me. Like, you have like the second and third born like changing his diapers and stuff. I mean, it's not like the more kids you have, sometimes the easier it gets. But we are making it really hard for ourselves because we typically only have one kid, and then we are having kids really late because we're focusing on our career. We don't have energy. My master told me, he says, Michael, go start your school while you're young, because when you're old like me, you won't have the energy to do it. And it's true. The older you get, the less energy you have. So, and the less patience you have. That's really key. The less patience you're going to have as you get older. And patience is really important when you're working with kids because they're going to mess up freaking everything. My dad was always on me. It's right by your leg. If it was any closer, it bites you in the face, like he would say things like that. He had no patience, He was a great dad though. But I don't blame him. Like the older you get, the less patience you have. So have your kids when you're young, have lots of them. It'll make your life easier. I'm not saying you have to do that, but
there you go. What's your
it's the mandate.
but like it's just it's understandable why parents are checking out, but we have to be honest that that's what they're doing, and we cannot put that weight on our teachers, and we cannot just flog them to death and say, oh, everything wrong with my kid is your fault. Take personal responsibility. They're your kids. They're not ours. Like I will get down on my hands and knees and I will lift your kids up as far as I possibly can. But if we're not on the same team if we're not doing the same thing in the classroom as you were doing at home,
Mm.
I mean, what I got 2 hours a week that I can be with this kid.
Mhm.
How many hours a week do you have?
Mhm. Mhm.
Honestly, it might be 2 hours a week. It might be something very small. It might be I pick him up from school, I put him to bed, and I drop him off in the morning. And the where he's learning everything is on his own.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And that is maybe the most important thing to take away. He needs you,
Mhm.
and he needs time with leaders who are going to move him or her, move them in the right direction.
I think it speaks to one of our mottos that families who train together stay together. And
Mhm.
it's not necessarily the training, although the training is amazing, but it's just doing things together. And
Mhm.
training together is a way to build in that time with your kids. I think that all of our families here who train together, we see the difference that it makes, that the kids get to see their parents doing something
Mhm.
physical and amazing and challenging themselves and being respectful to other adults.
Right.
And they're learning through all of that. And they're spending time together as a family. So whether it's training or taking walks together or going on adventures or whatever it is, that spending time with your kids is just so crucial. And I think that it's just more and more lost to screens and, like you said, careers and other aspirations. So,
Yeah. I've seen really not that great parents have amazing results in raising their kids because they spent a lot of time with them. And I've seen amazing parents, like people that, like, this is like one of the most charismatic, put together people I've ever met, but their kids are totally misbehaved. And it's because they spend no time with their kids whatsoever. So I really, I couldn't agree more with that. Like I know a lot of parents, I meet them and then they become friends and I talk to them behind closed doors and they'll say, I just don't feel like I'm put together well enough to be a great parent. Like I got so much going on. Like, like I don't got my stuff together. How am I going to expect my kid to have it
Mm.
together? And I can, sympathize with that. But the thing is, you don't need it to be all together. What your kids need is they need your time and your attention. And that is the one thing that is sometimes the hardest to give someone your time. That's always at the end of the day, that's maybe the most important commodity in our life. We only have a very limited amount of time. We can always make more money, but we can't make more time.
Yes,
yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Well, I think that's a pretty good place for us
Yes,
to
sir.
wrap it
Very
up.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. I didn't mean this to turn into a rant or a lecture, but I was really happy with Kristi coming on. We're really excited to have her as our manager. I think she fits in really well with our school culture,
Mhm.
and we got her back no matter what.
Yes, sir.
So, see you
Yes,
guys
sir.
on the mats. Let's keep training hard. If you enjoyed that podcast, please consider liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel, as well as hitting the notification bell. We offer in-person, group, and private lessons at our facility in Kyle, Texas, as well as virtual lessons anywhere in the world. If you'd like to learn more about our programs, you can find us online at risingphoenixtkd.com.